Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide Jason. There's a facet I find in many fantasy series, which rarely gets fully explored. What about dragons? Yes, dragons are going to change the world. Now, I know I have done a video on the impact of monsters on a fantasy world, but I want to talk about dragons, since they have a couple of special conditions to deal with. And the first is, there are two main types of dragons. The more animalistic monsters, winged reptiles, savage beasts. And the other is the smart and intelligent versions, ones with magic and wit. Those which hoard gold and so forth. We'll look at the mighty dragons, not the weak little fodder tier dragons. Those wouldn't be as much fun. Let's begin with the simplistic version. The idea where a dragon is a simple beast. Okay, simple beast is not the right way to describe it. Let's be honest. There is a role which a dragon is going to serve in an ecosystem. That is the apex predator. Yes, a dragon is going to be the most powerful and dangerous creature to contend with. Now on Earth, apex predators are things like tigers, bears, and humans. Yes, we fall on that list. But here's the thing, in all cases, those animals have competition. Lions have hyenas, bears have wolves, and we humans have them too. In mythology, there is a small list of mythical creatures which can rival them. This includes things like thunderbirds, krakens, and kaiju, and half of the kaiju are dragons or dragon adjacent. The best comparison then would be to compare dragons to ocean predators, like whales, where their predators are scarce, food is an issue. Keep the whale in the back of your mind. Dragons are big, and that means that they'll need to eat a lot of food. And I got a question for you. Why don't we have megafauna anymore? We've had them before with dinosaurs, and there's a couple of reasons. The Earth's atmosphere has changed over the years. Using a whole bunch of complicated science involving carbon dating, soil core samples, and growth estimates, it was believed that the oxygen and carbon dioxide were at a much higher level than today. That last one meant that plants could grow larger and provide more nutrients into the food chain. And that extra oxygen took some of the strain off their respiratory systems. In addition, most large animals tend to have a slower metabolic rate to support them. And this is important here. What are dragons eating? A common trope is they devour meat, but that isn't going to work. Blue whales eat about 4 tons of krill each day. It is one of the most prolific life forms in the sea. Flight is very energy demanding, and that is something which dragons are known for. How much is a giant, flying, fire-breathing monster needing to eat each day? Tons? And getting that from animals? No. They will need to add plants into their diet, and that brings up my first point. The dragons will likely also be eating the forest in addition to your livestock. So, they will be going after the crops since they are a fast-growing food source. While forests would likely be more nutrient-dense, they are much slower to grow. Assuming that we aren't dealing with some situation where magic causes the plant life to grow at a much faster rate, and that would help out a lot. Yet here's the issue, what lives in those forests and farms? You got insects, rodents, birds, small woodland animals, large woodland animals, and more. And they support the whole ecosystem. If our dragon destroys the forest to sustain itself, it will likely create widespread environmental loss. And this will spur on ecological secession. And we have an extra issue. Dragons are famous for their breath attacks. Fire, lightning, ice, poison, and more. That means we are looking at higher rates of forest fires, sudden frost storms, and more. But why is a dragon using such an attack? Chances are these would be energetically expensive. So, most likely, such an attack is reserved for fights against dangerous foes. And probably the most likely would be dragons on dragons. Fights for territory or access to mates. And this will likely create additional damage. So what does all this matter? Well, it means old forests are going to be rare. And you will constantly be battling the dangers of disasters, such as landslides, soil erosion, and so forth. But I want to look back at whales for a second. They did have a predator, and that was humans. While not easy, we can do it. And the same could be said about dragon slaying. And if I am right about the environmental strain of a dragon, humans are going to be eager to slay them. All of this brings up one final factor. I talked about it in another video about how common monsters would be, and dragons would likely be very rare. With their flight ability, they can cover a large territory. So I wouldn't be surprised if you could get several factions all united in a dragon hunt. And now we can look at the more dangerous version. Those which aren't just stupid animals, but are intelligent. I want you to think about how much destructive potential a dragon has. It wouldn't be outrageous to put them on par with an army in some settings. So, how would a military think about a dragon? Well, I'd say they would see the dragon as a threat. And there are two ways to address them. A threat or a deterrent. A threat is pretty self-explanatory. It is something you need to be ready for. If they know there was a dragon in a location, they would need a division stationed there, and a fortress. This might be a special anti-dragon force. Yet I said a deterrent, and you are probably wondering what I meant. Think about what strategies you need to deal with in wars and battle. What is the terrain like? What is impassable? Mountains and canyons are tough, but what about a dragon? If a dragon eats like a blue whale, we are looking at 4 tons of food a day. And how many tons of food are you going to bring with you when you just start marching through a dragon's territory? Yeah, that's going to be a bad idea. If a dragon is in the area, you will need to avoid it when preparing for war. So, if you have an intelligent dragon, you could set up an alliance of sorts. Even if it's not a real alliance, its presence can narrow your enemy's potential fronts in battle. Yeah, you might actually have a reason to tolerate the presence of a dragon on your lands. Even the rumors of a dragon could be useful. Say you are a merchant and are having an issue with a certain trade route. What happens if you say that a dragon is in the area? Suddenly, merchants might avoid that route. This would shift the trade routes, making them take a longer route. This could delay deliveries and likely deprive resources in supplies and trade. Yes, the presence of a dragon needs to be considered the same as an environmental factor. But unlike a mountain, it can move. Likely, the dragon's territory would be placed on maps, and merchants would need to keep track of it. But that works on dumb and smart dragons. And if you have a smart dragon, you could create a real alliance. Now, you'll have to deal with a few issues, feeding them namely. But if you plan for that, you could keep them from attacking your farms and cities. You'll need to make plans for sure, but it is possible. Now, if you can make an alliance with a dragon, you could get it attacking with your forces. And that could add plenty of power to your army. And that is kinda boring. Many books have dragons showing up as steeds. But dragons are known for doing other things, such as kidnapping princesses and hoarding gold. If they are taking princesses, that can quickly turn into ransom or political turmoil. Let's deal with the politics first. How many times has the assassination of a king played a role in Earth's history? A lot. So, a dragon snatching the princess could upset the line of succession and political marriages. And that's a great way to throw everything into chaos. So, if you were a smart dragon and you wanted gold, could you kidnap the princess and hold her hostage? Yes, you could, yet there is an issue. Something that very rarely comes up in a fantasy world. What does the dragon do with all of its hoard? Do they not understand the worth of it? Maybe, maybe not. If they are a smart dragon, like I am proposing, they wouldn't hoard the gold without a reason. They have to know its worth, or have a use for it. A status symbol amongst their kind, a way to protect their hide, or are they just trying to remove it from humans? This comes down to individual stories, sadly. But that can have an impact on human economy. They could easily reduce the amount of money circulating amongst the humans. But what happens when the dragon is slain? Their hoard would be taken by our heroes, as is the custom. They suddenly become very rich, and they spend their money recklessly on food, drink, women, and whatever else they want. Where do they spend their coins? The taverns and markets. And that means that commoners will get the money, unless the king takes a large portion as a tax. if you study Musu, the richest man in Earth's history, you will know that he did give away a large portion of his wealth, and it sort of wrecked the economy. Potentially, this could happen when you plunder a dragon's hoard. Of course, that would depend on how big the hoard really is. Yeah, the presence of dragons is going to have a bigger impact than any other massive monster showing up in a fantasy world. They pose environmental, political, military, and financial issues, which you will need to address. Even their perceived presence is going to be an issue, so keep an eye on the sky for dragons if you find yourself in a fantasy world. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next time. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.